Hello, hello. Thank you everyone for joining us for the summer setup series. We are here on the last day and we're talking about something really big, and that is family, immediate family and extended family, and how to strengthen those bonds and infuse meaning and get to know each other on a new level, and all of these things that I think we all believe are important. They're important to us, but sometimes we just feel so much inertia. We don't know where to start. We see TV shows and we kind of wish our family was like that family, but we don't know how to bridge the gap between where we are and being that family that's closer and more connected and has these shared memories. And so today we have Kelly and Jamie from GeniBLISS with us. They are focused on helping us strengthen those bonds and create those memories. And so I'm going to throw it to you ladies. Help us get started, especially if we're not a perfect Pinterest mom and we don't know how to start even connecting with our kids, like our teenagers or what have you. Where do we begin?
So I would say strengthening bonds is really about inclusion and spending time. It doesn't take Pinterest to come up with, choosing to spend some time. It's more about that choice of spending that little bit of time intentionally with the person that you want to increase those bonds of.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Kelly. And I would just add, in addition to that, it doesn't have to be every single day or that pressure of that I have to make it consistent and have this planned out for 3 months in advance. It can be spontaneous and it can be taking advantage of those little moments here and there to create a memory and build a bond.
Hmm.
Right. It's so easy to get started. Like oftentimes you think, oh, yeah, I'll go to Pinterest and I'll get all these ideas. And then we kind of fall down that rabbit hole of Pinterest and we have all these great ideas. And sometimes we're even left feeling overwhelmed like, oh, there's so much and I'm so far behind or I have so much to do. And it doesn't need to be that way. It's just really, really simple. Just start with those everyday things that you're already doing and that time that you're already spending with that person that you want to increase the bond, and just make it a little bit more meaningful or a little bit more intentional.
Yeah. What are some good ways to infuse a little bit more meaning in a moment?
Think that those that you spend time with, they may not always remember what you do, but they definitely remember how they feel,
Mm.
right? So they remember that they felt special. Oftentimes it's a like a parent-child relationship, and it could be as simple as putting the phone down when you're picking them up from school and saying, "Hey, Susie, how was your day today? How did this go? I know you were really concerned about this." And giving them that instant one-on-one connection without the electronics as a barrier.
Mm.
It can
I,
be just that simple.
I wondered if that would come up. I know the phones tend to just zone us out so easily. A notification comes in, and next thing you know, you're down that rabbit hole instead of present with the person you're with. And I love that approach really for any relationship, whether it's a family relationship or a friend, of just paying attention to what they were concerned about and asking about it. I know for me, that makes me feel so loved when someone does that. And so I can identify with that and I can connect with that, that of course, if it makes me feel loved, it's going to most likely help someone else feel loved too, if I can offer that to them. Um, do you recommend, like for people with kids, especially young kids, if we have an intention of maybe building certain memories or starting a new tradition or something like that, do you recommend sharing that intention with them, or do you think it's best to just kind of start doing something different and just trust that they'll catch up?
Well, I think
I
that it depends on your child, honestly, or your
Mhm.
niece or nephew, or those people that you want to connect with. You know them better than, I don't think it needs to be a line in the sand every single time. I think sometimes helping people understand the vision that you have can help them buy into it. So, for example, if you want to do a Sunday dinner night or a family game night, and expressing that, like, hey, we want to do this, and what games do you want to play, and get them involved in the process, they're going to be so much more invested in that than imposing it on them and, feeling like, especially with teenagers, that you're demanding their time, away from their friends. But really being able to go, okay, look at the situation. Maybe I want to share a family recipe or, make special dinner for them. I don't need to tell them 3 weeks in advance that we're going to do it. Over dinner, we can discuss that, or making it together, we can discuss it. And so I think it's picking and choosing, kind of depending on what tradition you want. And sometimes if you put the expectation out there, they're going to put up the roadblocks of, I don't want to do that. And I'm going to be a little bit more closed-minded about it. And so I think if you just look at what you're wanting from that particular experience and going, okay, I can adjust it and I'm going to try it this way. And you know what? If it doesn't work, that's okay. You've learned one effective way that doesn't work. And so you won't do that again in the future, or you augment or go, this was really successful this way, so I'm going to mimic that in the future. And I think people oftentimes, I know I get to where you start beating yourself up over those, but you don't have to. It's a learning experience. It's okay. And there's success in everything because you've learned from it. And so absolutely just jump in and start engaging with them, talking with them, and figure out what works best for your particular group, is your kids, your nieces or nephews, or, friends' kids.
I love that reflective approach, and the phrase you said about what is it you want from the experience, I think is so important, because if we are looking at a TV show or something like that, and it's like, I want the Parenthood family where they're all sitting around the table every Sunday night, a lot of opinions involved and it may not happen, but if what you really want is closeness, there are a bunch of different ways that you can tackle that. And so I love that approach. And Kelly, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, you're totally fine. I was thinking that when you said, should you tell them, should you tell them what your plan is? And I was thinking yes and no for the same reasons, right? So definitely having that buy-in, I think, is important, and that helps. Also, I think that if, for example, your goal is we need to build a stronger family, that might be something you don't go out and share. You might not say, hey, let's do this family game night because we need to be a stronger family, or we need to be like the TV family more. So darn it, we're going to have Sunday dinner every night, every Sunday. And so, maybe that's not what you're sharing, because, that isn't really the intent. But to get them involved in the process of what you're doing, we definitely think is really important.
Yeah. Love it. Yeah, that I think most of us buck against that kind of expectation, or even of ourselves. Like the idea of cooking family dinner every Sunday exhausts me, you know? And so I think it's a good sort of reality check for ourselves as well. Other than Pinterest, are there any good sources of ideas to kind of get the ball rolling if we want to think of what's that first experiment going to be that we're going to try?
There is a wealth of ideas on the internet. So many, many, many years ago, I made a very conscious choice to develop some family traditions that would be just our family. And I started looking, and at the time I went to the internet and I would type in family traditions, things like that, or examples of family traditions. And I always using that word traditions. And at the time, my mind was very narrowly focused on what a tradition could be. And in my mind, I'm thinking things around Christmas, or things around Thanksgiving, or around birthdays, or first day of school as a tradition, right? When a family tradition could be as simple as, for example, in my family, we started having, maybe I shouldn't admit this in public, but we started having junk food Friday movie nights.
I see nothing wrong with this. I'm on board.
So it was the first Friday of every month, and we would have special movies that we would either rent or borrow or just play. We would just have family together watching movies, and it was only once a month. And then it was whatever junk food we wanted to get at the store, and then whatever junk food we wanted to buy. Our particular favorite junk food was chips and salsa from, goodness, I can't even think, the Chili's. Chili's has great chips and salsa. And so we get chips and salsa, and then all the junk food we could buy at the grocery store, and we would just veg out that night. And my kids loved it. And they loved it so much that when we moved states, they decided we need to have a whole room dedicated to these movie nights. And then
Wow.
they would invite their friends over for junk food Friday movie nights. So it's something that kind of grew with the kids.
Next thing you know, it's a Costco run to stock up for your junk food
Right,
movie
right.
night. But what a great way to overcome resistance. Who wouldn't say yes if it's unlimited junk food? You know, like I'm there. It almost doesn't matter what it is. So that's so
Well,
cool. And like, oh, go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna say, with that same thing, you can apply it to if you don't have kids, maybe you've got dogs, maybe you've got friends or things that you can still collaborate and build those connections with. And it can evolve around food. Breaking bread, I don't know what it is about it, but it connects people and it just has that you can then associate that memory with a taste, a sense, a smell. And it just makes it so much more impactful as a result of that. So it can be a lot of fun too, picking out those Costco game night or those
Yeah.
Costco runs where you can pick out and strategic, okay, this time we're gonna get this or have a theme with it. And
Yeah.
it's just, okay, let's try it. If it works, great. If not, okay, we're gonna go
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, that flexibility. Earlier in the week, I actually shared my family's hot fudge recipe, which I'm biased, but I think is the best ever. The feedback has been good. But folks, if you haven't tried it yet, do yourself a favor, try the hot fudge. But it's so true that I have so many memories from my childhood that are linked to that particular taste. And to this day, it brings me back to my childhood. And I actually hadn't told my mom I was going to share it, but she texted me and it was so meaningful to her that I shared this recipe that means so much to our family. So it is incredible how something so simple can become such a thread that ties families together.
Now I've seen that video that you shared on the hot fudge, and it looks divine, and it is
It is,
definitely on my list, my short list of
yeah,
recipes to try.
worth
But what you yeah, totally. Now what you did, and you may not have even realized it, is you took those moments, that moment of that recipe or that idea, and you layered upon that something that is even more insightful than I think you may even realize. And what you layered on that was your memories of it, your experience with it. You talked about the story of growing up each summer in the same cabin in the Adirondacks and having this cake that your mom would make. And then you described how to make it. And maybe you were just filling time while you stirred for 4 minutes or whatever the time was on that. But that was a beautiful example of a way to share part of your past with your relatives or with your children or with whomever you're sharing that with, because it helps them understand you on a deeper level. And when we do that with our children, it helps our children have a deeper sense of who they are. And those things then become important to them
Mm,
as
I,
well.
I love that. And I think even if kids are a little too young to grasp onto it, it still sticks with them and it kind of comes back later. My grandma just moved to Florida and we cleaned out her apartment. And so the entire weekend was just going through old memories. And there were a lot of things that I'd seen before, um, but they had so much more meaning to me now as an adult. Like I think when you're a
Mhm.
kid and you see these old pictures, you're not yet ready to connect with them. And now I'm pushing 40 and I've lived a lot more life. I have a lot more perspective. uh, I was genuinely interested, and I think we're lucky that my grandma's still here, but that's never guaranteed. And so I think it's worth telling those stories even if they're not yet in a place to receive them. Now at least they have them.
That was such a natural way to do it, right? You were
Yeah,
preparing a meal and you
yeah,
just talked about your experience with that meal. And that's what parents can do with children or nieces and nephews, whomever you're interacting with. You can absolutely share those moments, which enriches that child's life.
yeah. Exactly. So let's switch gears a little bit and start talking about kind of the emotional side of this for us as the initiators. It's hard to put time and effort into something when you're not entirely sure of the outcome. And I was actually a family photographer for a little while, and I loved it. The only time it got stressful was when we were trying to nail a specific pose. As long as we were kind of letting the kids be kids and letting them just run around, and it looks like such chaos, but the images we would get were so beautiful and just captured the essence of these specific kids at that specific age. And I loved the magic of that. But part of what I learned was that you have to just let it unfold. Like if you go in and you have like your shot list and you're trying to force things into this particular literal picture in this case, um, it's going to be stressful. There will probably be tears. I feel like that was such a lesson for me about not being too attached to the outcome, because every single time we would wind up with hundreds of images that were just gorgeous. But what's your perspective on that? Like, how do we invest ourselves and set the intention and put in the effort without getting too attached to a particular outcome?
I think that's a great question. Like it's so pertinent because especially as women, we tend to put maybe more expectations on ourselves and our intended goal. I think the biggest thing to remember is that when you are looking at building connections and making connections stronger, it's the long game.
Mhm.
And it's a never ending long game. So in my example started maybe 17 years ago. I was consciously deciding to do these traditions and I'm still in that game and it's been 17 years. There isn't really an end point, right? You're just morphing and changing and you need to be fluid and accept that you're going to morph and change as you go. And so for me it's more about the journey and it's just not the destination. But I do have my most favorite quote in the whole world that kind of helps, and you probably can't see my hands going, but they're going like this because it's my most favorite in the whole world. But it keeps things in perspective. And it is true, I think, in nearly every facet of our life. And the quote is, day by day, nothing changes. But when you look back, everything is different. And that's so true, whether we're going to the gym or we're trying to lose weight or we're trying to learn a new language or an instrument. And the same is true when we're building these connections. Day by day, it may feel like I'm trying and failing. And it isn't that you're failing, you're just what you tried maybe just wasn't the right fit for that person or for the right time. And so you just keep trying and you keep moving and you keep moving forward. And then at some point down the road, you can look back and say, oh, well, I guess it really was making a difference all this time. And I just couldn't see it at the moment.
Mm.
And I think allowing yourself that space to try and to maybe give yourself that opportunity to morph and don't be so tied to success with this activity is that, I'm sitting around the dinner table and everybody's here and we're having that leave it to Beaver moment. It's that, okay, everybody got fed at the end of the night and I shared a story. Success, we're good for today. And then giving yourself that permission to evolve and to try new things. And if you don't hit it out of the ballpark in your perspective, it still doesn't mean it wasn't successful. It still doesn't mean it didn't make an impact. There have been so many times as Kelly and I've been working through the various scenarios and, just talking through long-term for our business, we've shared stories time and time again. I mean, we had one opportunity, one Christmas tradition that my mom really wanted to start of doing a competition on Christmas afternoon of different things, and there would be a prize. And the whole goal was to be able to get your name engraved on the trophy, and then you'd bring it back next year. And, we'd carry it and build on that tradition. Some could say it was an epic failure because when we started it, nobody wanted competition, but the intent was she wanted us to be together. She wanted us to have some memories at that time on Christmas, other than just opening presents and spending time and engaging with one another. So it's evolved to where it's not a competition. Maybe we do puzzles or we play games, but we still spend time together. And had she not had the courage to start and try something, we wouldn't have gotten to where we are today. And so going through that evolution and having that organic ability to be able to mold it. And as people change, I don't want to play necessarily goldfish every Sunday, like I may have when I was 8 years old, but the games change, the process can change, or when we do it. And I think that we often get trapped into, in order for it to be a tradition, it has to be every single, first Sunday, or every single, Christmas or Easter. And it can be adjusted and augmented, whatever your schedules are. Maybe you try it in an off time of year. We used to do one as a family. Our great grandma made these awesome popcorn balls, and our grandma would give them to us every Christmas. Well, we tried to do a tradition where we made those popcorn balls, and we tried to fit it in before Christmas, just like she did. And everybody's schedules were way too busy. I mean, it was entirely too busy at that time of year. So we decided to change it to like January, maybe February, when schedules had a chance to slow down. And that tradition has evolved and taken on a life of its own because of that. But we gave permission that we're still honoring the tradition and the history of our great grandma, but we're getting to work it and make it more modern day.
And that's the time of year when you need something to look forward to anyway. We cram so much in December, and December's all this light and joy. And then I live in the Northeast. January, February, March is all gray and brown and dark. And like, we need something to look forward to. We need more traditions in those months, like something other than Valentine's Day, please. So I love that. That idea of just taking something that could have been a stressful, we're going to jam this in for the sake of tradition thing, and instead is now something to look forward to in what would otherwise be a dry spell. And I love that phrase too. I just want to highlight, you said if she hadn't had the courage to start, because I think especially if you're starting a brand new tradition with maybe like older kids who might have other ideas of how they want to spend their time, or even adult children, it takes some courage to kind of bump up against that resistance. But yeah, I think with some persistence, with some intention, you usually get somewhere, even if it looks a little bit different than what you had originally set out for. So very true. How about if you're kind
Here's
of,
a
oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Becca. Here's a quick example, or maybe not so quick, but very, very recent in my family about something, a new tradition that I was trying to start, and it kind of fell a little flat.
Yeah.
And so I thought I would share a little bit about, it doesn't always work out the way we want it to. In fact, oftentimes it doesn't. So here's my tradition I was trying to start. So I have 3 children, 2 that live here in town, in the same town that I do. And I have a number of cousins like Jamie. Jamie's my cousin, that also live here in town. And my parents are still living and live here in town as well. And we do a first Sunday dinner, which is a tradition that we started. So, and the plan is to make it easy on the kids. So they don't have to cook, they don't have to potluck it. They can just show up. We have a very easy dinner, simple dinner. Everybody cleans up, we hang out a little bit, and we go home. And it's just a simple, easy thing. Well, during the months between May through August, every single month is jam-packed full of holidays, birthdays, and many other occasions or reasons to have to get together.
Yeah.
And so it seemed like the last couple of years, it was every other weekend there was this event, and I kind of felt like it was overdoing it.
Yeah.
So this year I decided we're not going to celebrate Mother's Day and Father's Day. Plus there's multiple, like my son's wife has all of her family here too, and you have to share, and that's not always fun, but yeah, you have to share. And so I decided, I had this brilliant idea that we're not going to celebrate Mother's Day or Father's Day. We're going to celebrate Parent Day, and we're going to do it on that first Sunday dinner in June in between. And then it's not like 2 other days that everyone has to come over because it's obligatory to go celebrate your parents, right? And I told the kids, hey, let's try this year. Let's see how this works out. And they were like, okay, they're used to me trying things on them, I think. And my plan was to have my parents come and to ask my mom some of these questions about the past, my past, her past, my dad's past, and have these kind of conversations around the dinner table, which I thought was a great idea. When it turned out my parents were going to be out of town, so they couldn't come. And then it ended up being this little bit of awkward. Okay, we're kind of celebrating Mother's Day and Father's Day, but we don't really know why we're doing it this way. And so the day ended, and it really wasn't the great plan that I had up here as to what I wanted it to be. And upon further reflection, I decided it was probably partially my fault for not really communicating my vision in terms of why I'm doing this, why we're going to celebrate this, rather than just in passing say, hey, by the way, we're not doing Mother's Day and Father's Day this year, so don't worry about it. Just hold on to your cards. We'll do it Parents' Day instead. And so, was it a success? Yeah, I don't know that I would even use the word success, but would I do it again? And I would do it again, but I would definitely frame how I'm doing it a little bit differently. And that goes back to that need to be flexible because stuff isn't going to work out. I mean, this was just a couple weeks ago. It did not work out the way I wanted it to.
Life is not perfect.
It's not.
Yeah. Well, and I think that kind of answered, what was going to be my next question is, yeah, resetting when you're in that moment. I think sometimes it's so easy to melt down and even to respond with anger when things aren't going the way you hoped, or it's like I was trying to do this nice thing for all of you, and it can just boil over so easily. And so I love that reminder to just take a step back and like, let it be. Understand that life isn't perfect. It doesn't mean you're a failure. It's not a verdict on you or
No.
even on the relationships.
Jamie, did you want to talk around about resetting, like around siblings and challenges there?
I think that's a reality. We all have strained relationships, or we have, some of those people in families that could be a little bit more challenging sometimes to work with, or have those memories or build future memories with. But there's absolutely things that can be done. And I would say finding common ground is the where I would start every single time. So finding something, a positive memory, I would definitely, if you're going to plan to meet in person, find a neutral location. So can you meet at a park? Can you meet at a restaurant, a play yard, something to where there's no memories attached to it? And so it's like you're starting fresh and finding something common. So I would say if I was looking with my siblings, we used to play on a slip and slide. I don't know if anybody remembers what those were, but we had a slip and slide. It's quite warm here. And so if we had a positive memory around slip and slides or pools or things like that, and I wanted to build forward, I would reach out and maybe say, hey, do we want to get the kids together and get them on a slip and slide, because they don't believe that this is really how we used to play with the water, and try to maybe make it a little bit more modern and have some splash pads and some other things associated with that. And it doesn't have to be limited with just kids. It could be something like, maybe we're going to go to a movie together, or maybe we're going to go try something special. So we would I like to try different cuisines and different desserts. Desserts are absolutely, probably Kelly's and my favorite thing ever. And so trying different bakeries or things like that, where I can go and we can try, you can have some conversation. And you know how Kelly talked about, she wanted with her parents and to share some memories or some experiences from the past. You can incorporate those same types of questions. Maybe it's one question that you get answered. Something simple like, what was your favorite show growing up? If I don't know what my siblings' necessarily favorite shows were, or what their favorite movie was growing up. And so starting back and looking back at a time when it was positive, you had good interaction, and then, okay, what do you like watching now? Or how do you spend your time now? And not in a judgmental way, but just seeking and that genuine interest. And like we talked about earlier, putting down the phone, giving somebody your attention, giving that gift of time and care, that you really do engage and really you're looking for that. And so building on those things and going forward from there, I think, is looking at that common ground is so important. And then trying to build new memories. We're not grabbing the past and dragging it forward. We're taking threads of the past and we're building a future, and we're building current memories. We're working in the now, but again, pulling from the past. And because it's part of us, it's how it's helped shape to each of us are today. And so we want to make sure that we're successful in building those memories now. And like I said, it doesn't have to be, okay, every first Monday I'm doing this with this niece or nephew or kid, and putting that pressure on ourselves, because I think we're really good at doing that and imposing that on ourselves. And we don't need to. We can say, I want to do this once a quarter. And you know what, if I make it and stretch it to every 4 months, okay, that's still success. I'm still trying and I'm getting something on the calendar. One thing that we found has been successful is when you're in the moment with things like that, is scheduling the next event. So that way it's already on the calendar. You're looking a couple months out. So usually schedules aren't as busy. And then who can shows up on the next one is who schedules the next one. And so that way it kind of builds, but it's not like, okay, I've got a 5-year plan right here. It's in triplicate copy. Please make sure that you give us ample notification if you're not going to be there. That's just adding more pressure that we don't need. It can be dynamic from year to year, from month to month, and that's okay. And those interactions and consistent building can help repair relationships, build bridges, and it really can increase cohesive families. And it doesn't have to be, people are not perfect. I'm not perfect. Nobody's going to be perfect, but they're positive interactions and that build memories, and that creates those relationships that we want. But it's one step at a time. It's not, I've got a 12-year plan for this.
Yeah. We're so good at that all or nothing thinking. Yep. Yeah, perfectionism cannot be the measure we use. That's just not an option available to us. And that's okay. That doesn't mean anything is wrong with us. So.
There's a fair amount of clinical evidence that supports the idea that the more children, understand about where they come from, their past, their parents' past, their grandparents' past, maybe even some ancestral things going on back there too, that there's a whole bunch of benefits to kids that understand that. Things like an improved psychological well-being, higher levels of emotional well-being, a higher sense of self-worth, even to the point of resisting illnesses and being able to cope with adversity. I mean, I could go on and on. The list is really kind of endless to these benefits of children understanding. And that research dates back a number of decades. And more recently, what they're finding is that not only is that true for children, but it is true across all generations, not just children. So much so that some in the nursing field, they are proposing that we actually maybe alter a little bit how we treat to incorporate some of that, what I would term historical background information. And that's why I love your example so much of your hot fudge recipe, because it checks like all the right boxes of how to share some of that history with those that come after you.
Without it being a history lesson.
Right.
No one
You're
wants to
not
sit through
saying
that.
sit down.
Sweets
I'm
to
going
the
to tell you
rescue. Yeah. Once again, food comes to the rescue. That's what we're learning, is food and family go together for a reason. And it's a
they
good reason.
do.
Always. And it, again, doesn't have to be fancy food either. Yeah.
Well, and
Junk
like that
food.
example that I gave about our popcorn ball tradition,
Yeah.
we started that, and we were kind of testing the waters with that and decided, what, we're just going to do the girls in the family that are in town, and we're going to just have a girls' night and do, Gama's popcorn balls.
Yep.
Great, turned out it was really good. Then it evolved to, we've got to have more food. And so we made a potluck with it. And then the boys got jealous and they decided they needed to be involved in the tradition. Kelly's dad was infamous for just popping by and grabbing a plate and grabbing a few popcorn balls. And then we discovered this really awesome treat that we make now, and we call it Moose Munch. But we found that people really enjoyed the idea of getting together for popcorn balls. And every time we talk about our great grandma, we talk about our grandparents, and it's not formal. And we may ask, Kelly's mom is really great about sharing a lot of those things. So I may ask her a question, or, she may have some context from some of the cousins of that generation that used to make them with her. And so we share those. And then we decided that, we really like that basis. And now we make our token batch of popcorn balls, and everybody takes 1 or 2 home. But then we make a really big batch of Moose Munch that follows the same process, but people go back with a bag of it and they're super excited. It comes off the stove hot and it's just delicious. But we've evolved, and now we have a whole bunch of people, and it's kind of a come as you please, and even come and go as you've got time. But having that basis, it's still called popcorn balls. Everybody still knows it's from Gama, and that's how we've built on it. COVID did put a damper on some of those larger gatherings, but people still talk about it, to where when we had some family in town, we did an impromptu popcorn ball night. And it was in the middle of summer or spring because everybody was in town. And it's like, you know what, we need to do this.
Mhm.
And that's okay. It was thrown together literally in a couple hours. Somebody offered their house and we just went with it.
Yeah.
And so it didn't have to be this big production that's been scheduled forever too.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, everybody knew that this is a family tradition we do now. And
Mhm.
sometimes we involve other, aspects of it. But I think it comes back to those intentional decisions. When it is scheduled, having that idea of what we want to share, or that one of the memories or a different story from maybe our grandpa, our great grandfather, associated with that. So we're still tying in a tradition, but we're sneaking it in, and it's not this, okay, please sit down and here's a 15 slide PowerPoint and we've got handouts and a family tree for you, to where it's all of these things that you want to add and build. And it's really tempting to take it a little bit bigger. And in some cases we've done that and it's not been as successful. It feels too formal and
Yeah.
oppressing and not fun. But as long as we've kept it light and pretty fluid, we've had really good success with it.
Yeah.
But we've got new generations coming up, new kids being born all the time. And so they've always grown up with that tradition and that exposure to it, which is pretty special.
Yeah. Once we are participating in these new traditions and we're getting the family together and all of that, what are some good ways to preserve the memories without putting too much emphasis on it and winding up with thousands of pictures on our phone that we never look at? Or, if we're not naturally artistic, what are some good ways to kind of start preserving what I've heard you call modern family history? And I love that term, as we're creating history with these new traditions that someday the grandkids and great grandkids are going to be talking about our generation, and the weird things we did. And there were plenty. There will be no shortage of stories of weird things we did. What are some good ways to start preserving that?
Becca, let me ask you a question. What is your earliest memory?
Riding my tricycle in the driveway at the house we lived in until I was about 3 years old with my little friends.
Okay, so you were about 3 years old. Do you have any pictures of you on that tricycle or in that driveway or anything of that like
Maybe
that?
not that I can picture. No.
So I have very similar memories from about 3 and 4 as well. For me, those memories are enhanced because my parents have a few pictures.
Mm.
So my memories are of a house that we used to live in until I was about 4.5. Those are probably my earliest memories. And I would say I have a broad assortment of memories. I have memories of playing outside on the swing set. I have memories of being chased down the hallway by a babysitter. I have memories of being in the kitchen and walking, like I could even draw like a diagram of the house because I can clearly tell which rooms were where. And it was a little tiny house, but I can still remember, and I could tell you what color the carpet was in different rooms, and that might tell you what year I was born. Actually,
Harvest gold.
I know, right? That, yeah, there were some interesting colors. Anyway, digressing. Those memories, I truly believe, I have so many of them because we have photographs of different events and things that took place in those spaces. And I think that that's so true, that photographs enhance that recall of memories. And one thing I would say is, with teenagers especially, if it didn't get recorded, did it happen?
It's true.
Right. So if there's no proof now, did it really even occur? And how quick our memory comes and goes. And there's so many things that I don't remember, but my mom would say, well, of course we did that every week for like 2 years. I'm like, I don't remember that. and probably because there's not a photo of it that I've seen. So I have lots of different examples of different ways you can take these photos and do something with them, because I do think the key is getting them off your phone.
Mm.
You know, it is easy to take photos in the moment, and it's important to do that. But it is so important to do something with the photos afterwards. So I can show you a couple of examples of things that we do with photos in my house.
That would be great. Yes, please.
Okay, so this is a tradition we started, I think, in like 2007. And this one is maybe a little more crafty or a little more techy if you're using technology to do it.
Okay.
But instead of giving gifts to siblings at the holiday time, we instead make 4 pages of scrapbook pages for our family. So it's 4 pages of whatever images you want to use from the year that capture your family. So this is my family. Let's see, what year is this? Looks like 2011. So it always starts off with a family photo. And then this one, there were maybe larger photos on that page and then smaller photos on this page. This was a different year, and it was more just hodgepodge of a bunch of photos kind of all crammed together with a little key of, you know, what each photo represents, so that my siblings know why that photo was important. So they can look however you want them to look. They don't have to be fancy. Another way is, and this is like truly like one of my most favorite ideas ever, is you can establish a private Instagram account and not have anybody subscribe to it, but it's just yours. And then you can post whatever you want to post on it. And then almost automatically, after you have 60 photos, they automatically print it into a book and send it to you.
Look
Like,
at that.
this is like the best idea on the face of the planet. And I'll show you a little bit about what it looks like. So these are kind of the photos, the Instagram photos. And as you can see, some of these are screenshots of a computer screen. So it doesn't have to be pretty. They do it for you. You don't even have to set it up. You just connect that private Instagram account to it. These are just screenshots from a phone.
Cute.
But it was important to grab the photo. And so this is what I would call kind of down and dirty or quick and dirty, but super simple and automatic. And so these companies will send them to you automatically. And so to me, that's kind of the easiest way to do it.
Yeah. Well, it fits in with
on
something
those,
we're already doing. Go ahead.
Right.
well, and on some of those, you can put a 1 or 2 line, you know, as you're posting them, what it is or why it's important, and that will post in those photo books as well. So you can document, this was so-and-so's first step, or this was a new car, or, you know, this is a great day, you know, they lost a tooth. And it's already in there in the photo, and you've got the photo of the memory right there, and it's that snapshot. And it's not meant to be a journal. It's meant to be a spark for the memory and discussion.
Mm.
Let me see if I can find a picture of a couple of different pictures of what that can look like. That one's just mostly that. Okay, so this is an example of what the quote looks like underneath the photo, right? Yeah. So super simple, super easy. And if your quote is very long, it looks a little bit different. And that's what I was looking for it. But you can also choose to edit this before they send you the photo book.
Okay, so you have that option if
you have that option.
Okay.
You can set it up that way.
And you can zoom in, make pictures bigger, and if you want.
Oh, okay.
You don't have to.
It's nice to have that option though, because I would be constantly thinking about like, is this perfect? And sometimes you don't want to worry about that in the moment. You want to just get it up there so you don't forget about it, and you know.
So if it's really long, what they do is they give you a full photo here, and then they put the text here.
Okay.
Or you might have a full photo here, and then they'll put a little mini photo and then all of your text.
Okay, cool.
But to just capture that moment, and then this is what is really cool too, is look at the spine. Can you see that they date it for you? Everything?
Yeah.
Like,
So now
that's
if
the
Life is
coolest
Good, is that the company that does these?
No, that's the name that was given to this series, is Life is Good.
Okay.
So they all have the same name.
Oh, okay. What is the company that does those?
There's a couple of companies that do this. Chatbooks does it, and this is kind of the only branding you get on it. It says
Okay.
Chatbooks on the back.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's another company called Artifact Uprising that
Oh,
does it as well. And yeah, I just think it's great to connect that Instagram account
yeah.
and have it be basically automatic for you.
Yeah. I had no idea Artifact Uprising did that. I've used them for photo books, but because they're so nice, they're like heirloom quality, I put so much pressure, meaning I do like one every 5 years
Oh
as
no.
opposed to, right? Like, and I'm sure there are a lot of pictures that are lost in my phone by the time I'm making a photo book. So I kind of like that idea of something that already fits. Like I'm on Instagram all the time anyway, like taking that picture, posting it is already so natural. Plus, I think it kind of fits in with what we were talking about, generations down the road. Instagram is not going to be like it is now if they still exist. But it'll be like, yeah, in the year 2021, this is what we did. We documented our lives and we shared it with the world. And it'll give them an even more accurate glimpse into the way life was back then, which I think is fun.
Right.
I think that we put a lot of pressure on ourselves that,
Yeah.
like you mentioned with those books, that we have to, go through everything and really like have everything dialed. One of the things that you can do as you're waiting in the line in the grocery store, or you can, as you're waiting to pick up kids or waiting for something, you can cull your own photos and go, okay, out of, the things, the soccer game last night, this is the one photo that's great. I'm going to mark it or tag it. I can post it on that Instagram, or like me, I put it in a photo album in my iPhone. So that way I've got it ready to go. And
Yeah.
those are easy to just grab and go. I like to do at the end of the year with around the holidays. I do a card, and I make sure it's a card with a lot of photos, and then I write a letter for it, and I keep a copy of that. So that's part of
Yeah.
my history in a 3-ring binder. It's nothing fancy, but that's my like snapshot of the
Yeah.
year, because I am horrible at doing the day-to-day capturing, and I have all these photos for the
Yeah.
year and go, what do I do now? So trying
Yeah.
to summarize a year in a page, and that's what works for me.
Yeah. And I like that idea of having an album right on your phone where you store them until you're ready to do something with them. And
I call that folder like the best hits, greatest
oh, I
hits.
like that. Yeah.
And if you put a year
Yeah.
on it, then if you don't do it
Yeah.
right away, you can cross over years with it with that
Yeah.
same idea. But it
I like
certainly
it.
makes summarizing your year much faster.
Yes. I can't summarize last week. You know what I mean? Like I already forgot it. It's a blur.
But
Um,
as Jamie mentioned, I think that key though is to cull your photos.
yeah,
You don't
it's
need
true.
15 photos of last night's soccer game.
Yeah.
You may not even need any. You might, because you have 15 different soccer games, you might just pick the couple out of all of the
Yeah.
soccer games that represent that
Yeah.
moment.
Yep. And then be willing to let go of the others instead of
Absolutely.
scrutinizing and zooming in and yeah.
Now,
Uh,
if you have an iPhone and you use Apple TV, you can connect your photos to Apple TV so your photos can be used as the screensaver when it flows through.
Fun. Okay,
Or if
cool.
you, yeah, or if you have Alexa, the Alexas that have the screen on them, the Echo shows, if you have photos and you store them on your Amazon Photos, then you can have your photos show up on that screen as
Nice.
well, like a screensaver.
Oh, those are fun ideas too to kind of keep them in front of you without it having to be printing them and framing them and
Right.
all that work and that pressure and all of that. So, and then you can have 100 photos cycling through instead of one printed photo. It relieves some
Well,
pressure.
and the goal is to spark the memory,
Yeah.
to get the kids or to get the family members back to that moment.
Hmm.
And sometimes seeing those can do that just in an instant. They can go, I remember when we did this,
Yeah.
or I remember when we played Family Twister and we took this selfie and it was a great night. And
Hmm.
then sometimes that can help make it the times when you have to be the parent and holding those lines a little bit more. They can look back and go, but they did all this other, it's remembering fun times too,
Yeah.
and brings that back.
Mixing some of those in. So,
Absolutely.
as we wrap up, I would love to know what can we look forward to from GeniBLISS and all of the things that you have coming down the pike.
We are always working on something, it seems like,
Yeah.
with Jenny Bliss, for sure. Right now, because we are focused on kind of this modern day version of family history, on our current family's history, we are really aiming to make those moments count and make each one of those moments count. And so what we are currently working on is a membership group where we're going to work along with the people in the group, and we'll have different topics and different speakers, but kind of a different focus every month. And for example, the phone is maybe like one of the biggest challenges right now. And what do you do with those photos? How do you get those photos off of your phone? Where do you store them? Do we need to keep all 10,000 of them, or things of that nature? Just kind of the how-tos, and help demystify some of that technology stuff to make it easier. So that's where we're
I love
focused right
that.
right now.
And I can vouch that Kelly is so good at explaining technology, and she knows all of the technology hacks that I had no idea existed. So
I do.
I will share that with everybody as more details come out, but I'm excited to see it. And I love that you're doing that, because I think it does take so much courage, and courage is always easier when we're side by side with other people on that same journey, putting themselves out there and living with intention. So thank you both. Thank you for being here and for sharing so much of your perspective and your wisdom on these topics that can be so fraught for so many of us, and can feel so big and wide and unfathomable. And thank you for spending some time making it approachable and practical and less scary for us. I really appreciate it. And we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. We were thrilled to be here and join with you. We would like to give your audience a special handout that kind of summarizes this information. This is just for your audience only. It's
Thank
super
you.
exclusive, but it summarizes this information along with a number of different ideas that you had asked earlier about, things you can do, traditions you can start, maybe some helper tools like conversation starters, things of that nature. So it just puts all that together for them, because
Awesome.
we thought that'd be really helpful.
Thank you so much. That excites me. I'm excited to have that for myself. I'm excited to share it. So thank you so much.